So today, we're down to 4 classes left for the semester. So the semester is coming to a close. So what I'd like to do is talk about some logistics for this week and next as we go to our final classes. So we'll talk about homework 11 today. You have some time to work on homework 11 during class today. We'll also talk about the final project requirements for next week. We'll also talk about the final exam. And because I gave a couple of students extensions on homework 10, we'll talk about Oracle and homework 10 on Wednesday, in Wednesday's class, right? So again, today, as I said, what we'll just cover. Wednesday, we'll cover a little bit about what we're doing in homework 11 and debrief homework 10. Next week are going to be the final presentations and group projects, which I'm going to go over the requirements in just a minute. So on Monday and Wednesday, you will be here for both days. The projects are due Monday at 10 a.m. for all sections. You will turn in 6 files minimum. You will turn in a Word document, which is the write-up for your group project presentation. You will turn in a PowerPoint for the presentation you'll be delivering next week as a team. And you'll turn in the 4 Excel files, the as-is, the bull, the bear, and the target valuation. Okay, that's due Monday, 10 a.m. for all sections. Half of you will present on Monday. The other half of you will present on Wednesday of next week. This Wednesday will tell you who's presenting on which day, but you must be here for both days. If you miss one of the days without an excuse, you're going to lose a substantial portion of your semester grade. A couple of requirements I do have for the presentations, which I'll mention here, which is it's a big portion of the grade. The people that are presenting next week are going to have a lot of anxiety. They're not used to presenting in front of the classroom. So number one, while they're presenting, you're going to give them their full attention. So for 90 minutes, you're not going to be on your cell phones. You're not going to be on a computer. There's not going to be any clacking sounds or anything else for either of the 2 days, regardless of whether your presentation. You're going to be sitting in your chair, listening politely to the people that are presenting. Okay? Now, there's a movie called My Cousin Vinny, where Vinny goes into the courtroom dressed inappropriately, and the judge says, if you come back dressed inappropriately, I'm throwing you in prison. So the next time he shows up dressed inappropriately, he gets thrown in prison, he tells the judge, I thought you were kidding. So I'm using this metaphor because if this happens to you next Monday or Wednesday, I will escort you from the classroom and I will wipe out 30% of your semester grade for non-participation. And I'm not kidding, okay? So of all the things that have been difficult for the semester, I put up with a lot, let you have a lot of flexibility. These 2 classes I do not, all right? And it's not about me, it's about the people in front of the room. They have a lot of anxiety, they've worked very hard. The last thing they need to do while they're trying to get their grade is for you to interfere with that process. So we're going to be respectful of everybody that's presenting, and we're also going to come dressed appropriately. So again, on the average day, I don't care if you dress like you just came from the gym, but for those 2 days, you will be minimum business casual. Okay, so you don't have to wear a business attire suit. Business casual is fine, but no hoodies, no sweats, no flip-flops. I mean, I know it's now December, it's getting cold, but again, business casual. Somebody said, just honestly in the last class, like, look, I don't own a jacket and tie. And I said, I don't expect you to come in a jacket and tie. Like if you're wearing, if you're a male, polo shirt, jeans tucked in, not wearing flip-flops, that's okay. Just not sweats, not hoodies, not stuff like that. Just professional, something that you would actually wear to an office environment is what I would recommend. And again, you need to be both days, whether you're presenting or not. So just getting that out of the way. Because to be honest with you, it's kind of a celebration of the semester as well. It's a good chance to hear what's going on in the industry by hearing all the companies present. And that's what I'd like to keep the focus on for the presentations. Now, talk more about what needs to be in those presentations in just a minute. That's either Monday or Wednesday. The following Monday, December 10th, which was supposed to be the last day of class where we have the exam. Now, the university usually schedules the final exam on like a Saturday right before Christmas. It's awful, and it's like 9 in the morning. So we're not using the university exam period, right? And the other thing is the Monday, December 10th is kind of anticlimactic because we've covered everything, we've done the presentations, and all we're going to do on Monday is come in and say, here's the final exam that you're going to do as a take-home. So our last class will be Wednesday, December 5th. There will be no class on December 10th. okay? And the exam will be a take-home exam, okay? And here's what that means. Is starting on December 10th, you'll have 7 days to take the final exam, okay? It's an individual exam, and it'll be a lot like midterm 2. It will just be essay questions. There will be no conversion. There will be no valuation. It's just text essay questions, right? Now here's the thing. During that 7-day period of time, you will click on the link and you'll have to finish the exam within 90 minutes. Okay, so you don't have 7 days to take the exam once you see the exam, but you have a 7-day period at which you can choose 90 minutes uninterrupted to take the exam individually. Again, it's not a group exam. Okay, and then you'll submit it during that period of time. Clear on that one? So again, there's no physical class on December 10th. The final exam in lieu of that class is a take-home exam. You'll have a week to do it, and that'll be made available after we finish the presentation. So our official last day of class will be Wednesday, December 5th, a week from this Wednesday. Okay, questions about those logistics? Hopefully pretty straightforward. All right, so let me talk about the group project requirements for next week. So remember, you're going to be turning in for the group project both a PowerPoint and a Word document. And the first thing is both of those parts of the project are going to be graded independently. So for example, when you present, let's say you're presenting next Monday, at the end of your presentation, I'm going to give you a grade. Okay, I would not have read the presentation, or sorry, the Word document when I give you your PowerPoint presentation grade. So basically, anything that's in that Word document is not going to count towards your grade. Now, after everybody does their presentations, I'm going to listen to 24 presentations. I'm going to forget what you said in the presentation when I read your paper. So the paper is going to be graded as if I never heard your presentation. So you have to put in all the information in both documents, both covered in class and covered in the paper, because they're going to be graded completely independently, but you got to have the same information in both, okay, including the exhibit. So it's just very clear. So don't just say, oh, I said this in the paper. If it's not in the PowerPoint, you said in the paper, you don't get credit for it in the PowerPoint. You'll only get credit for it in the paper, right? So what needs to be in both of these? Well, first, you need to have a cover page, okay? And just to get this up front, the cover page should basically say, here's my company. You know, we're doing a, say we're doing General Motors. We're doing a sell on General Motors with a price target of $20 per share, and here's our team members. Like that should be the cover of everybody as you get started. So just kind of setting the context for what you're about to get into. Then, 4 sections for each part of the project. Section 1 is EIC. And again, you must include the exhibits. So one of the themes we've had all semester long is you can't just talk about something without the data. So if you don't have the data to support it, and you don't refer to that data, it never happened. So therefore, in the EIC section, you need a minimum of 2 screenshots from Bloomberg. Number 1, you need the beta screenshot, similar to the homework assignment. So you're going to have to talk about the industry beta and your company's beta. Okay. Number 2, you're going to need an RV screenshot of the operating spread, operating ROIC and WACC, to talk about the attractiveness of the industry and whether the company has competitive advantage. And then you're going to also have to include a 5 forces table, okay, contents around the table. But that's basically the EIC section. Second section is the historical analysis. So to do the historical analysis, you're going to talk about the ROIC tree. I need to see the tree. So there's got to be a picture of your ROIC in your PowerPoint and or in your Word document. I'm not going to go looking for it in your Excel file. In addition, CFI, same thing. Got to see the CFI in the PowerPoint in the Word document. Okay. Third section, multiples. Very similar to your multiples assignment. Okay, where it had the 2-tab Excel file. One was the PE, the other was the enterprise value multiples and the analysis associated with it. The difference? 6 companies, not 3. Okay, so in our previous assignment, we had 3 companies. Your company and 2 others. Now, it's going to be 6 companies. Your company plus 5 others. Okay, so just think of the multiple spreadsheet, add 3 more columns, right, in both tabs. And that's what you're going to be presenting and turning in. Now, they have to be real peers, but I'm giving you flexibility. So you can choose who the 5 peers you want to put in your multiple analysis. You don't have to do the whole industry, but you do have to have 5 peers. So I'm giving you this as an option because let's say one of your competitors has crazy numbers that don't make any sense. Don't put them in your multiple analysis. Like use a different company, right? So find peers that actually are relatively easy for you to explain in the multiple section, okay? But nonetheless, that's going to be key in the multiple section. Finally, in your valuation, okay, you're going to go through the as is, the bull, the bear, and the target. So with that in mind, I would suggest screenshot of the ratios and some of your key assumptions. So as is, here's my screenshot of ratios and assumptions that I went through. Bull, bear, here's how I went through each of these. Target, here's the final ones that I did, and basically walk through those 4. Finally, and this goes back to homework 10, make sure that the implied Bloomberg equivalent multiples that are in the model are talked about in your bull and your bear. Okay, so here's my bull. Here's the multiples of the bull. This is why it seems a reasonable multiple of the bull. Here's my bear. This is the bear. Here's why I think, given these multiples, this would be a reasonable bear. And again, if you don't do a hold, if you do a buy or sell, here's why my target price is reasonable given what the multiples would say. So include that in your presentation as well. Okay, you'll have 15 minutes. I will have my iPad with a countdown timer. When it hits 0, you're done. Okay, so for the PowerPoint, you'll have 15 minutes to present. Half of you will go on Monday, the other half of you will go on Wednesday. I will ask at least one question at the end of the 15 minutes per team. Okay, and that will also count towards your grade. And most likely, I'll ask something topical. So for example, this morning, General Motors had big news. So in the 11 a.m. class, they're doing the auto industry, and one of the teams is doing GM. So even if the presentation was already ready to go today, and that news article came out in the Wall Street Journal, you can bet I'm going to ask the GM team about what it means to them. By the way, does anybody know what happened to GM today? What happened?
20-50% of the workforce.
Yeah, 15% of the workforce, bunch of plants, and a bunch of cars. It's kind of awful news for a lot of people. It's not what you wanted to see in the holiday season. So, sorry, you asked a question?
Yeah, so for the as-is, when do you want us to do it?
So good question. So the question he's asking is, when should you do your as-is, given we're a week out from the presentation? Ideally, I would say between Wednesday and Friday of this week. And just in your PowerPoint, in your paper, just say, it's the as-is as of this day. Okay, so that way it's all synced up. However, for particularly your PowerPoint, it's real-time information coming up until then. So for example, if today was the day of presenting and you're the GM team and you read the headlines this morning about GM, I wouldn't expect you to go back and change your paper or PowerPoint. However, given your PowerPoint, I would come in ready to at least mention that was something that would have affected the company I'm with. Otherwise, expect that I would be asking you about this and surprised that you didn't bring this up. Same thing. If I'm talking about autos and you didn't talk about the Nissan Renault horrifying situation where, everybody, by the way, what is that? What happened to Nissan Renault?
Oh, something about the CEO like embezzling money or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So basically the CEO had 22 million of unreported income that he was basically using the company as a piggy bank to fund the lifestyle of him and his family. Like, that's just something you don't do, and obviously has devastating consequences, not just for him, he got arrested over this, but for the companies that he's the chairman of the board. As well as a senior leader for the combined entity. So long story short, again, it's going to affect all the auto industry companies. So you should be just aware of things that are going on in your industry. You know, one of the last classes to do is oil and gas. If you notice what's been going on with oil prices and all the craziness, like that's going to really be impacting the industry. In fact, what was your industry again? Fast casual. So again, just be aware of anything that's going on that might pop up in the headlines. But as I said, the long answer to your short question, I would say do it Wednesday through Friday of this week. Pick one of the days. You just put everything as of that day. Okay, yes?
And I think you just said, but between Wednesday and Friday, should we go and do the ask?
Ideally between Wednesday and Friday this week. Yeah. Knowing that most of you will probably likely do it more on Friday and you're right up over the weekend, but that's okay. I'm just saying it for those of you that plan ahead between Wednesday and Friday. By the way, in the last class, somebody basically said, they were just now getting the data out of their company and realized they were having trouble with the data and they wanted to change their company. Okay, so I'm like, they're a week out, I'm letting them do it. But here's the thing, later this week, I'm not gonna let you do it. So if you come to me on Wednesday and you say, oh, our company's statements don't balance, I'm gonna be like, figure it out. Okay, so no more changing of companies at this point. All right, so you gotta go with the companies that you have. All right. Not that you shouldn't, but just saying. I understand how things sometimes work. All right. So, a couple more things about your presentations. So, I'm going to give you 2 things to help you as you do your presentations that I've seen derail teams in the past, because I'd like to see you be as successful as possible. Okay? So, just watch out for these 2 things when you're doing particularly your PowerPoint presentation. You have 15 minutes to cover 4 sections. We just went over what the requirements of the 4 sections are. Each section has equal weight. Okay? Realistically, the EIC section tends to go long. All right? Now, I'm going to let you choose this semester who presents. So you don't have to have all the members of your team present. In previous semesters, I actually used to make the entire team present. I'm not doing it. To some degree, I kind of regret that. But the point is, you can have 1 or 2 or 3 or 6 people present. It's up to you. Whoever presents is responsible for the entire grade of the team, so hopefully I don't screw you up. But here's the key. Whoever's presenting EIC, here's what I've seen in the past. They go on for 11 minutes, all right? Which means there's 4 minutes left to cover the other 3 sections. You can't get to the other 3 sections. It destroys your grade, okay? So what I'm just telling you is, even though the temptation is the EIC has the most information and it tends to go the longest, it's still 1/4 of what you got to cover. And if you don't cover those other sections, no matter what you say, or sorry, what's in the PowerPoint, if you don't say it, I'm not going to give you credit for it. So you have to make sure you cover each of the 4 sections. So I would strongly recommend, because here's what typically happens, you guys slap it together on Sunday night, 4 different people throw it together, and you're like, we'll figure it out Monday, and we'll just wing it. And then the timing is all screwed up. It can be devastating to your grade. So just be aware of that. Has been a problem in the past. The other problem, similar to this, is you have 4 independent people writing 4 of the sections. They slap it together, and it's inconsistent. Okay? And it doesn't sound inconsistent to you at 2 a.m. early Monday morning when you slapped it together, but when you're saying it in 15 straight minutes, and the people in the EIC are talking about what a horrible, awful industry this is, and terrible 5 forces, and the person doing the valuation is like, bye, 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 what a great growth, and all the margins and improvements over time, it actually gets almost sadly funny. So what I'm saying is these are the 2 major errors to avoid, which is working with your team. Hopefully you will avoid those, because I'd like to see everybody do well. But those in the past have been the grade killers that really you can't do anything about. Okay, so again, that's key to the presentation. I'll also let you know that I'm not going to grade you on style points. Like, I am to some degree a professional presenter, right? I can be up in front of the room and I can talk. I don't have anxiety. I'm not worried about the group. But many of you aren't professional presenters. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be in the front of the room. You're going to have a lot of anxiety. I'm not going to grade you if you look a little bit nervous or have problems. So if you need to have note cards and you want to read from those note cards and that helps you with your presentation, that's okay. Okay. So again, I'm not going to say, oh, they're using note cards, I'm going to grade them down. No, if it actually helps you so you don't forget anything, then that could actually be a benefit. Okay. So again, do what's ever best for you, but I'm not going to purely grade you on style points. Now, realistically, if you're reading from note card and that's what you're saying, and I have no idea and you're just mumbling, then I'm not going to obviously give you credit. Okay. Same thing. If you're talking a mile a minute and you go through fast and I can't even keep up with you, I'm also going to have trouble grading you. So within reason, I'm not going to grade style points. But as I said, if you're actually reading or having trouble with some of the words, that's okay. Just get the content across. And remember what we've been doing all semester, don't forget to use numbers. Like, don't point to the ROIC tree and say, oh yeah, the ROIC is getting better here and the tax rate there, and be general and vague, because that's going to destroy your grade. So just like on any assignment we've done throughout the entire semester, the ROIC in 2013 was 2.6%. It went to 4.9%. The tax rate went from Y to Z. You got to use numbers as you go through the presentation, particularly in data-intensive presentations. Yes, sir.
Do we need screenshots for like the
Anything you're referring to that's data, I need to see it. If I don't see the screenshot, it never happened. Okay? Here's the other key thing about your PowerPoint. If it's not in your PowerPoint, I'm not going to let you talk about it for a grade. There is a tremendous disadvantage to going first. The teams that go on Wednesday generally get better grades than the teams that go on Monday. It's human nature. And here's why. Because the teams that go on Wednesday watch what the teams did, everybody's in the room, on Monday, and they improve. Because you can see what they did wrong. You're going to probably hear about some of the grades that they got, and then you're going to be able to adjust. And that's just a little bit of an unfairness. So to counteract some of this, here's the deal. If everybody turns their presentation in on Monday, I'm not going to let you talk about anything that's not already in your PowerPoint. So for example, and this happened, a team forgot to put in their bull and the bear. So they realized that they forgot to put in the bull and the bear, so somebody verbally talked about the bull and the bear. You can talk about it, you're going to get any credit for it. Or you pull up another file. Here's my Excel spreadsheet with my bull and my bear. It's not in my PowerPoint, you don't get credit for it, even if you pull it up. So if it's not in the PowerPoint, it's not in the paper, doesn't get credit for it. So that's the only way that I can do it for fairness to the teams that are presenting early on. Okay, I'm still not saying that there's some advantage to going last, because again, you can get a feel for what people do right and wrong. But regardless, one way I'm going to do it is it has to be in there, and it goes back to his point about screenshots. If you say something and you don't see a screenshot, I'm not going to give you credit for it. All right, and by the way, you can consider this assignment or announcement to some degree the grading sheet. So I'm going to have a version of this in front of me, and I'm going to be grading using this criteria for both the paper and the PowerPoint. Okay, now let me make a couple words about the paper. Generally, the paper should be each section, 2 to 3 pages to answer each section as a guideline. Now, somebody in the last class said, well, what if I need more? It's like, great, you can write more, but don't just write to write, right? Like more words doesn't always equal better grade. And be practical. I got to read 24 of these pretty quickly by the end of the semester. So just reading more words to read more words doesn't excite me. All right. So if it's relevant and you need to use more words, that's great. But the flip side is don't write a paragraph with 3 bullets. That's also not going to help your grade. It'll be insulting to the project. So generally in the past, approximately as a guideline, 2 to 3 pages of writing per section, 10 to 12 point font, double spaced. Okay, that would be ideal. Plus exhibits. Ideally, inline exhibits. And this is just human nature. If you find it to be the reader's responsibility to go searching through your 40 pages of stuff to find a data point that you reference to hopefully figure out how to give you credit for the answer, don't feel that that's going to help your grade. So the best papers that I've seen in the past, inline screenshots. So for example, if you're talking about the EIC, put the screenshot in the EIC section of the data. If you're talking about the industry attractiveness, put the industry attractiveness RV screenshot operating ROIC WAC right there when you're talking about it. Talking about the 5 forces, put the table of 5 forces right there in the 5 forces. Don't say it's in Appendix G and then go expect me to read the whole thing and figure it out. I'm not saying that I won't try and do some of that, but I'm just saying that generally it's just easier if you kind of put it all together as you think about the requirements for each section. Okay, so essentially they're going to be graded independently, but that's what you're going to need to put together. Right? Other questions? Hopefully I'm trying to be thorough in terms of what I've told all the teams, in terms of the requirements. But as I said, just one last check. As you guys are putting this stuff together, go back to this announcement, almost like check the boxes. Did we do all these things? If you did, you'll probably be in good shape. All right? And then back to your presentation, you're doing it as a team. So again, I'm generally going to let you run through all 15 minutes without interrupting you. All right, until you're done. If you're done in 12 minutes, I'll ask questions sooner, but I'll hold questions to the end. I'll ask every team at least one question. And again, questions are going to probably come up based on what you're saying or what I've read in the news this week about the companies that you're doing business with. But nonetheless, here's the key. If I ask a question, any one of your team members can answer it. Okay, so remember, you are a team. So just because you have like one person up front or 2 people up front, the other team members can actually help as you're answering the Q&A. So treat it like a team. And it's up to your team as to how you want to do the presentation. I'm leaving that completely up to you. Okay, but it is a team grade, and there will be a team peer review on the team peer grades. Okay. The other thing that's due next Wednesday is next Wednesday, the 5th, will be the final day of the stock simulation. Okay, so a couple things are important here. So go back into Bloomberg. So if you type in idea, This is section, what, 301? So two things. First, nobody's making any money. So that's just the nature of the horrible market that we're in. So it's relative performance. But here's the important thing, besides relative performance. You have to have 10 more longs in the second half of the semester than the first half of the semester. Otherwise, your team will be disqualified. So I can already tell you that this team didn't make enough trades, okay? Because they should have had 10 trades in the first half of the semester and 10 trades in the second half of the semester. And it's 10 incremental trades. So if you go back to Elms and you go to the Files section, there is a folder called the Bloomberg Trading Sim. And in your section, this was the ranking for the first half of the semester. This is how many longs you have. I need to see 10 more longs, and it's blurry on the screen, but the point is, if you blow it up in a normal screen, you can see this, the GIF. But the point is, there needs to be 10 more longs at the end of the semester than there were halfway through the semester. So it's not 20 cumulative, it's 10 incremental for the first half. Okay, so make sure you do enough trades. That will be key. So essentially, just letting you know about that as well. All right, any other questions about the assignments? Yes?
So shorts don't count.
Shorts don't count. Longs.
Can you show us how to sell?
Why would you ever want to sell something? Sure. It is not intuitive. So let me go back to Bloomberg. So let's say I'll go to my portfolio where I have my one stock of PayPal, okay, which has been hammered too. So I want to sell PayPal. Once you're in your portfolio, over here on the left, there's a red X. It's called closing the idea. If you click on that, that's basically how you sell. So basically, you put in your 50 characters, close idea, and it's sold. So circle red X is how you do it. Now, in the 24-hour period, the circle red X won't be available. It'll look almost like a shield. And until you see the circle red X, you can't sell. So the 24-hour trading is represented by that. But you'll see that when you get to your list of companies. You won't see it on the main screen, just on the list.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is homework 11. So I'm actually disappointed to find out from the 11 a.m. section that when Bloomberg was here doing the training earlier this semester, I thought they showed you how to use the EQS, which is the equity screening tool. But it turns out that they may not have, because most people were like, what? What are you talking about? So one of the most powerful features of Bloomberg that could have actually helped you with the trading challenge, you still got a week, is the equity screening tool, EQS. And it does just that. It allows you to pretty much pick any criteria and screen stocks that meet that criteria. So there's 1,042,000 potential securities in the database, 336,000 that are kind of like actively traded, but you can pretty much screen on any of those criteria. So let me give you an example. So let's say I want to focus on U.S. companies, SPX. And I'll start with the S&P 500 index. Now here's something interesting. There's actually 505 companies in the S&P 500 index. Everybody know why? Trivia? Yeah.
Some of them have A and B classes.
Good. Exactly right answer. He said some of them have like A and B class shares. So for example, a good example would be Google. Google has class A shares, Google has class C shares. And so they're actually in there twice, even though they're an S&P 500 company. So again, there's 500 companies, the S&P 500 index. So I've quickly done to that criteria. So I'm going to add another criteria. Has anybody read the horrible, awful things that are going on with Mexico today? Or at least saw the pictures over the weekend? All right, so take out your political parties. All right, Trump, our fearless leader, has basically started tweeting this morning, and I haven't seen any news, he's considering shutting down the U.S.-Mexico border, right? So again, just take your business hat, take out the personal horror of the situation, put your business hat and say, okay, you shut down the border, then bad things are going to happen to people that are trading between the U.S. and Mexico. So let's see what companies in the S&P 500 have Mexico exposure. So what I want to do is I want to search for, and I'll start doing revenue, and I'll do geographic segment revenue percent. And for the segment I'm looking at is in the Americas. I'll use North America. Actually, they have it in Latin America, Central America. And I go to Mexico. So included over here. And I'll do it based on the latest year, revenue percent. And then I can do greater than 20. 1. Okay, so there's one company in the S&P 500 that gets 20% of its revenue from Mexico. And you might say, gee, who is that? Well, if you click down here, see results, Kansas City Southern Railroad, okay, which basically is probably a regional railroad that goes probably from Mexico through Texas and all the way up in that area. So that's the point. My guess is Kansas City Southern stock is probably having something going on with the stock price today. I don't know, but that's the point of the equity screening tool. Or, let's go back to the equity screening tool, and I'm going to kill the geographic criteria. Or I could say price change. So if I look at the price change in 30 days, greater than 15%, these are the S&P 500 stocks, 14 of them that have had more than a 15% price change in the last 30 days. Okay. Now, I'm going to also add some additional criteria to say, what if they have an operating ROIC greater than 15%? I'm down to 4 companies. And a growth rate go year-over-year growth rate. Greater than 10%. There's 2 companies that are growing faster than 10% a year that have an operating ROIC greater than 15 that have seen a difference in their share price of more than 15% in the S&P 500 in the last 30 days. Red Hat and Starbucks. Okay, so here's the point. What you've been doing all semester, and it's sort of our inherent bias, is you pick a company and then you try and justify why you want to invest in it. And to be honest with you, it's backwards, right? What professional investors actually do, and this is what Warren Buffett espouses, is let's figure out criteria that should lead to a good investment, and then let's see what stocks meet that criteria, and then let's choose who we invest in. So it's kind of working backwards, not forwards. So here's the point. Like, let's find companies that have seen a dramatic drop in their stock price that, given the fundamentals, shouldn't have the dramatic drop in the stock price. Or let's see some companies that have sky-high EBITDA multiples. So again, I'll go back. Show me companies, kill some of these, that have EV to EBITDA, and I'll use best EBITDA, greater than 14. And then I can say that have operating ROIC less than 5. So here are the companies that actually have high multiples but don't have great returns, right? Those are the ones that could potentially be the ones at risk in a volatile marketplace. Or a month ago, we were talking about one investment bank was talking about the probability of recession in the next 2 years. 30 days later, every single investment bank is now talking about the potential of recession in the next 2 years. So let's do a criteria that says, I want some safety stocks, so let's find some very low beta or even negative beta stocks that we could potentially invest in, and then let's select one. So the point of the story here is that rather than saying, I want to invest in Starbucks and let me justify it, the point of the story says, given some criteria that I think would actually be a good trade, what types of companies could meet that criteria? And given that list of 12 companies, I think that, and I'll pick this company out, that Boston Scientific is the company that I would like to invest in given all these criteria for this reason. That is homework 11. So homework 11 is kind of fun in a way in that I'm not restricting you on the criteria. You can use any criteria that is relevant to what we've been talking about this semester, whether it's EIC, whether it's multiples, whether it's the key value drivers, create a screen. And it doesn't have to be the S&P 500. You can look at companies that are exposed to Asia and try and figure out with the trade war that's going on with China, if it gets ratcheted up, who's going to be impacted by that? As I did with the Mexico, if the U.S. were to close the border, I know Kansas City Southern has a big exposure to Mexico right now as a U.S. company. So that's what I'm saying, like you can actually kind of play around with some criteria, put in a screen, based on the screen, get the list of companies that meet that criteria. You're going to export this to Excel. You're going to turn in this Excel file because across the columns, I got your criteria and then the companies that meet it. And then you're going to write a minimum 250 word paper, 250 words, individual, that basically says, this is why I think this company on the screen is investable. So you're working backwards. You don't have to do a valuation. You don't have to do a full analysis. It's just, given this criteria, here's somebody that I select that meets this criteria. This is why I selected this company. Okay? And it's just practice. As I said, I wish you guys had actually known about the equity screening tool earlier this semester, because I think it would have really helped you with what you're doing in the stock set. All right? And it's just a very good feature of Bloomberg. I actually thought Bloomberg trained you on it. I realized that they did not. But back to this. Let me hit OK here. But back to this, that's what I want you to do as homework 11. Yes, sir.
So basically in the written piece, we need to talk about what our criteria were and kind of how they relate to like whatever's going on in the market, why we think that's a good investment.
Yeah.
And then do we also say like, let's say we get a list like that, why did we choose Boston Scientific?
Exactly.
The other ones?
That's exactly what I want you to do. And that's the level of detail I'm looking for in the 250 words. You know, or here's another one. You could do dividends. Show me the dividend paying stocks that have a high dividend yield. All right. And so therefore I'm looking at those as potential safety stocks because even if the stock price goes down, people are going to look at dividend yield and that might shield them from going down even further. You know, so again, open it up. So there's not any one answer here. And it's really your chance to play around with the equity screening tool. And the idea is come up with a scenario that you think could lead to a valuable investment. So it's almost like if you were pitching me an investment, here's the criteria I would use to pitch an investment, then find which companies meet that criteria. And then why a company that meets that criteria is the one that you would choose off that list. That's really what you're doing for that assignment. So I'm going to give you the rest of the class today to work on this, right? And again, you're going to turn this in by Wednesday, 6 p.m. for all sections, and you're going to turn in the Word document in your Excel file. If for some reason you can't export the Excel file, because I know some of these machines continue to have problems, take a screenshot of this, all right? But what I do need to see is I need to see your criteria across the top, and I need to see the companies. And so somebody said, well, how many companies can we have? So if the answer is S&P 500 index done, that's not the spirit of the assignment. Okay, so basically just giving me a list of a bunch of companies is not the spirit of the assignment. So you can't just say the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down, so therefore here's the Dow Jones Industrial 30, so I'm going to pick one of these companies. Like, that's not what we're talking about. So you can go down to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, but you still should have some criteria on, hey, it went down, but these companies probably shouldn't have gone down given what we know about value, and they are the ones we might want to consider investing as a contra to what we see in the marketplace. So again, I'm not going to give you an answer for how few companies, but if your list is like 50 to 75 companies, it's probably not a narrow enough list. Like in the last few classes, people have had 4 to 10 companies on their list, and some have gotten even more narrow. And it's not a point of just creating a narrow list, but as I said, come up with something that would be an interesting trade, and then see if you can screen for it, and then write about it. That's homework 11. It's an individual assignment. You got to talk amongst yourselves. You want to share some ideas. And by the way, if this helps you with the Bloomberg stock sim in the next week, feel free to use some of these for your actual buys. Okay, but this is going to be due on Wednesday. All right, on Wednesday we'll talk more about these. Maybe share some ideas. We'll talk about homework 10, and again, any final questions on the group project. All right, make sense? Okay, I'm going to give you the rest of the class time to work on this. Good luck.
Professor, a question about rate account. So midterm 2 is